Here's how I made $100,000 at 21. How I published a podcast that has featured Bradley, Grant Cardone, a bunch of other top-level entrepreneurs, CEOs, started and published 4 books to Amazon, started a company with Grant Cardone called Spotlight. It's a tech company with his 10X incubator program and a bunch of other businesses. 8 other failed businesses at 17 years old, one of which was a cryptocurrency that made $5 million in 3 days. I'm going to unveil the curtain, explain every single story, and show how I made $100,000 in cash by the age of 21, moved across the entire country multiple times, from New York to Florida, New York to Savannah, New York all the way out to Scottsdale, Arizona, and where I am currently, because I have unlocked the hack. I've turned my brain into a literal money printer. I've turned my phone into an ATM, and I can withdraw from that bitch every single day if I want to. The problem is you can't. It's because you don't know what to do. And so in this video, if you watch the whole thing, if you actually have an attention span longer than 30 seconds, I'm going to reveal every single secret that I walked through. I'm going to tell you my entire story. It's going to be engaging, it's going to be fun, and it's going to change your fucking life. 17 years old. Most of you guys at 17 years old have the option to go to college, option to go to a trade school, option to go to the military. But you have this little thing in your brain that says there's something better to do. There has to be. My parents make $100,000 a year, but I don't want to make that. I want to make $1 million a year. What is stopping me from being Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, earning $1 million a month, $1 million an hour? What is literally holding me back from doing that? It's your brain. And at 17, I realized that I was aware for the first time that I was in some type of race, the rat race. And I was only able to escape if I fueled my brain with the proper inputs that allowed me to escape. So the very first lesson at 17 years old was me meeting a man named John Senecal. This today is one of my biggest mentors, my biggest inspirations. His family reframed out the way I thought about the world and the way I thought about money. At the time, he was recruiting me for Amway, which, if you don't know what Amway is, it's the largest multi-level marketing platform in the world. Network marketing, multi-level marketing, a lot of people say it's a pyramid scheme. It's just an information problem. You guys don't understand what it really is. Anyway, John wanted me to join this Amway, and at the time, he basically told me, hey, look, I have a book for you. It's The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. If you read it, you will work for 5 years of your life shoveling shit, and at the end of the 5th year, you'll be rich. You'll be able to travel to wherever you want, buy whatever you want, do whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want to do it with. And I was sitting there, I'm like, dang, dude, that sounds like a miracle. Sounds too good to be true. And I was like, well, maybe we should talk to some millionaires first and see what they think. So he goes, yeah, sure. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. And I realized for the first time that I met a millionaire. And I mean a millionaire with $1 million in the bank, cash, after taxes. Never had done that before. Most Americans are millionaires on paper because they own a house, and a house is basically worth $1 million in appreciated value. But I'm talking about $1 million cash. You open Bank of America and it's just sitting there, 7 digits. Boom, on the debit. At 17 years old, I started reading a bunch of books, a lot of them. Every single self-help book that you've ever even conceived or thought about reading, I've already read them. I listened to Lewis Howes' School of Greatness, the biggest podcast for self-help and betterment, and just realized that there's things that I don't know how to do, people that know what I need to know, and I just need to plug into that, activate myself. And while I'm doing this, I'm not just sitting, listening to podcasts and reading books. No, of course not. Why would I do that? It's too small. Think bigger. David Goggins enters the frame at 17 years old. And during this phase of me reading all these books and doing all this audio, I started biking a lot. I didn't really have any girlfriends. I had left my old girlfriend, Logan, and that was a whole separate thing. But I was now in a phase where I was single, so I had a lot of time. So I used that time on my dad's old bicycle from college. This thing had like 7 gears, barely even worked. I still ride it to this day. The seat had a hole in the cushion, and I live in the middle of New York, the middle of upstate New York, where it's not just cold, it's freezing. There's snow on the ground, ice in the air, you can't even breathe. So I'd pack on layers of clothes, I'd get on that bike, and I would ride 20 miles in the freezing cold. It's snowing out. There's no school, there's no cars, there are no people. You could go 100 miles in one direction, you wouldn't even see a house. But you'd see Alex Davis on a motherfucking bicycle listening to Lewis Howes in the background, School of Greatness, reading and listening to an audiobook at the same time. I was fueling my mind and becoming a different person. I was in monk mode. But I didn't realize that at the time. I just thought that this is what everyone did. I would listen to Grant Cardone talk about how to build out a pipeline and how you got little drops of income coming in from all different sources. And at the time, none of it made sense. They were individual puzzle pieces, and I could not zoom out and see the whole puzzle, which later in the video, you'll be able to see the whole puzzle for what it truly is. I'm reading all these books, listening to all these audios. And then I start entering the arena of business. I decide that if I'm learning all this stuff, I should probably implement it. So I say to myself actively one day, I'm now entering the arena. I've done enough preparation. I know what I need to do. In Think and Grow Rich, it tells you, set a goal so big that you feel stupid to even chase after it. So I told myself I was going to make $1 million in 100 days. There was 100 days left in my high school class, and I was going to go for it. I was going to make $1 million in 100 days. But I had no idea. I lived in a small town with less than 100 people. The gas station's for sale. The restaurant's for sale. There is nobody here. Zero opportunity. Everyone's leaving my town. On top of it, I have no skill sets, no network. I have nothing. I was raised in a middle-class family where the only friends that I even knew were friends I went to school with out of convenience. So now for the first time in my life, I was forced in the most uncomfortable position I've ever been in. But if I was going to make $1 million in 100 days, I would need to expand my network. So I met John Senecal. What's next? I start a podcast called Finally Ready to Grow, where I interview the biggest entrepreneurs, the biggest celebrities known to man. I'm 17 years old. I have a laptop that barely functions and a microphone for $50 that I bought off Amazon. And I go to town, emailing every celebrity that I ever watched on YouTube. I didn't know any other celebrities. I start emailing everyone. Alpha M, Jeremy Fragrance. Alpha M responds, yeah, sure, I'll do your podcast. That was my first ever guest at 17 years old. A guy with 10 million followers enters the arena, comes on my podcast while I'm doing this challenge. Then I spend $2,000 on a man named Mike Ashabi, who cracks my mind on what it is humanly possible when it comes to making money. This guy spent $17,000 on his wife's wedding ring. He had $4 million sitting in a Bank of America account with a Cartier ring on that costs more than most of your guys' car. This guy could spend and earn money like you couldn't imagine. It was the first time I actually cracked the code. Then I meet my celebrity matchmaker, Carmelia Ray, who is the largest celebrity matchmaker in the entire world. She's been on CNN, Fox, USA. She becomes my next mentor. I have John, Mike Ashabi, and Carmelia Ray as my mentors. Carmelia connects me to this guy, who connects me to this girl named Catherine Connolly, who sold her last company for $500 million. She sold that company 3 times. By the time she was in high school, she had sold her company once for the first time for $1 million. And by the third time, she had sold it for she had sold her third company, a matchmaking company, for $500 million. I got to be on the phone with her. I got to listen to her story. I got to talk to Erden Eric, who was the only person that has ever survived on this planet, on planet Earth, to circumnavigate the globe with human power, meaning he biked across every country, rode across every ocean, walked through cities, not using a motor. Took him 5 years, 12 days to go around the entire globe, and he came on my podcast at 17 years old. I talked to Katie Spotts, who was on Lewis House School of Greatness podcast, who then rode across the entire Atlantic Ocean at 17 years old. I was talking to absolute killers in every domain possible. I was learning from them, absorbing their contents into my brain. My favorite saxophone mentor, Augie Bello, got him on my podcast. The guy who created the Duck song, Forest Fire 101, got him on my podcast. I was networking now with the largest minds and the largest creators that this universe has ever produced. And I was becoming one of them too. I decided with my friend Jason that we were going to start a cryptocurrency during this $1 million challenge. I needed to have multiple streams of income, or so I thought. This cryptocurrency would revolutionize the space industry. We were going to call it ASTRA. In our first 3 days of launch, we made $5 million in market cap. And then the co-founder rug pulled all of us, stole the money, dipped out to the desert, started a Bitcoin mining farm out of a cargo container. Craziest story you'll ever hear. Then I go ahead and start a marketing company called Korolev Enterprises, where I learned for the first time that I could own an LLC if I go to LegalZoom. I was the only underage person. You're supposed to be 18 when you start a company. I walked into the bank with all my legal documentation, my EIN, my operating agreement, my articles, sat down with my bank teller and told her, I want to start a business bank account. And I asked her, it says that the FDIC insures up to $250,000. But what happens if I put more than $250,000 in that bank account? And this bank teller starts laughing at me. She's like, honey, if you put more than $250,000 in this bank account, please. She didn't believe my vision. She didn't even think it was possible for a 17-year-old to actually legally own and operate his own company. But there I was, moments later, grabbing my business bank account for the first time, blacked out card, Korolev Enterprises. I'd made $0 since I started this game, but I was on top of it. I carried that card around everywhere I went with me. I would say to people, I own an LLC, I am a CEO, I own an LLC. Then we go into the next phase called the shiny object syndrome, where I literally got so much shiny object syndrome and FOMO about every single business opportunity that ever existed, and I leave for college. The last business venture that I started before leaving for college was Spotlight. It was days before the 100-day challenge was over and I had made $0. But this guy promised me, named Jared Yellen, Grant Cardone's business partner, promised me that I would make millions of dollars in a couple of weeks if I just gave him $5,000. I sent him $5,000 via wire, and then I went to college. I started and co-founded a company with Grant Cardone himself. He owned 33% of this company called Spotlight, which I founded. I hit Savannah, Georgia, and I dissolved the entire company. Decided I needed to focus on college. But what I really was saying was, I probably couldn't do this because I wanted to get chicks. Chapter 2. 18 years old. When I was 18 years old, I decided to go to college. Savannah College of Art and Design. It's the most expensive art school that this universe offers us. 100% acceptance rate. You get billionaire sons, millionaire sons running around the campus. And now you have Alex Davis, who has just spent the last year unlocking his mind on what is humanly possible. So now I understand why some kids are driving Bentleys and some kids are driving Rolls Royces, and why Alex didn't have a car. I start texting every chick that I could possibly imagine. My confidence was through the roof. People were responding left and right. I was jacked because of all the biking I had done. And then this one girl came out of the shadows. Gabby Keating. The absolute love of my life. Not at the time though. I was so focused on business, so focused on making it, so focused on getting it racked up that I couldn't stop and think that maybe this girl that I was with was the love of my life. I pushed her off for weeks and months and months and months. Every time that she would want to come to me, I would say, no, I don't want to date you. I don't want to date you. We can't date. I need to rack it up. I need to get that shit racked up. Couldn't date her. So I'd push her out of my life over and over and over again. And eventually she never came back. Over the entire year of my college experience, not only did my business decline, my health declined because I started drinking. I wasn't focused on working out as consistently. I wasn't waking up at 5 a.m. My mental declined significantly and drastically. I actually hit such a low point in life that I started and attempted suicide. I became so viscerally depressed, I thought there was no hope for me to be able to walk on this planet ever again. And then I dropped out of college. Chapter 3, 19. By the time that college was over for my first year, I dropped out. I told Gabby that, hey, look, I love you, but we can't be together. This is the final goodbye after breaking up with her 26 different times. The September of that year, of me being 19, I made a realization that I was completely wrong. That the only way for me to be successful is not to live in New York. It's for me to go back to Savannah, but not be at college. So my plan was this. With only 2 weeks of preparation, I was going to travel all the way from New York to Savannah by myself with Gabby, and I was just going to move in somewhere. I had $6,000 in my bank account. I could figure it out. I could pay rent. I could do the adulting thing. I could make it happen. So I find this Facebook marketplace listing for a house for $3,000. I send him $2,000 over Zelle. It turns out to be a scam. I send another guy $2,000. That turns out to be a scam. And then I send another person $500 plus $500 of security deposit, $1,000. And that turned out to be a house with 3 Indian girls, and I was going to be living in their living room. This is the month of September, by the way. I get hit with COVID on the way down there. I have Gabby drive me the entire way to Savannah. She has a trooper, drives me all the way. Love her to death. She drove all the way down there, no complaints. The last couple hours I get in, I feel good enough, I drive. The sun sets perfectly, and I realize, like, I'm back in Savannah. I'm ready to go. And I had just spent all my money on just random stuff. Here, there, all over the place. It was just crazy. Money was flying out of my bank account. I had to buy all this furniture. I had to buy a bed. I had to buy a desk. I had to buy chairs. I had to buy all the things that normally you would buy when you move into an apartment. The plan was that I was going to live with these Indian girls in their living room, put up curtains because there was 3 entryways into my bedroom, or the living room. I converted the living room into my bedroom. I had a little tiny closet, had another little tiny closet, and I had every Lego that I had ever used. Because that previous summer, I started a Lego stop motion animation channel. My first video got 1.6 million views on Instagram. I thought this was going to be my career. I was going to sit in Savannah, date Gabby, and I was going to be a Lego animator. Weeks later, I realize I need money because I'm running out. So I go and apply to 80 different jobs in person. Day after day after day after day. Sit down resume, sit down resume. It's a rat race. One small little British pub says that they will take me. Smaller than probably your own kitchen at home. I say, okay, I'll be a server. I serve there on the nights that I have off from trying to study for my real estate exam, because I think that's a smart idea too. And trying to build a marketing company at the same time. I have 3 avenues of making money. Gabby's leaving me because she thinks that I cheated on her, which I did, just wasn't when she thought. The entire thing falls apart drastically. I end up trying to move out of the Indian spot because it didn't really work out. I start moving back in with one of the other guys that spent I moved out of the Indian spot and moved back in with the first guy I sent $2,000 to that I thought was a scam. He was a lawyer from Brown. The first night he came with a U-Haul he had paid for, picked up all my stuff, put it in his house, and then I find out that he's gay and that he wants to date me and he wants to have sex with me. And so he offers me $7,000 to have sex with him, and I say, no, we're roommates. We are roommates. Immediately, the first night was terrible. Everything starts falling apart. I end up leaving his house drunk because he wants me to cuddle in his bed, and I go back to Gabby while we're broken up. Drunk, deranged, couldn't figure out what was going on, and I start making amends with Gabby. But at the same time, this guy that I now live with, Billy, starts freaking out, saying, you're getting kicked out, you've got 30 days. Then it goes down to the 10 days, then it goes down to 7 days, then it goes down to you have to leave today. So I go back into his house, I grab my stuff, and I leave. In 1 month, I had lost everything. I'd become homeless, and I was alone, and I was 19 years old. The month of September, me being 19, was the hardest month of my life. Life just threw shit after shit after shit, and I was getting destroyed. I drove 18 hours back up to New York, started my real first successful business, Real Media Solutions. I got a lead list of 750 leads, YouTubers that actually needed short form content when YouTube Shorts just launched. And I started DMing and mailing and emailing every single one of them day after day after day. The first day I sent out 70 emails and got 1 response. Hopped on a Zoom call and signed my first client. After 3 years of working and grinding and putting in hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of my life into business, I had signed my first client. 3 days later, I signed my second. 2 days after that, I signed 3 more. I had signed 5 clients in a week just through cold email. I hired a virtual assistant. I hired an editor. I hired a lead generator specialist for my company. I put them all into Slack, and I was managing a full-blown operation. It was insane. I had almost made $10,000 cash collected in 1 single week from being literally dirt poor. And then all my clients left. During this process, though, I started a little tiny Facebook group called SMA Basics, the first client. I decided I would leave, and there was nobody in it, so I let it go. There was nobody in it, so I put it on the back burner. I went back to another community college to try to finish out college for the second time, took a bunch of accounting classes, marketing classes, and business classes. That entire chapter of my life was a blur. Nothing really happened other than me driving through snow every single day to get me driving 40 minutes through, other than me trying to drive 40 minutes through snow every day just to get to school. It was terrible. It was truly terrible. But March 1st hits, and John and I are back together. And he tells me, why don't we move to Florida? I said, yeah, when do you want to move? He's like, well, we can move now. I'm like, could we? And I realized like I probably could. I contacted the dean of my college and say, look, guys, I'm moving to Florida, so can we just move my classes online? I know you guys don't offer online classes, but can we switch everything to online? Is that possible? Can you accommodate for me and my success? I'm an aspiring entrepreneur. I got my dream job in Florida. But the truth is, I had $50 to my name. I had spent all my money. I had literally nothing, and I was about to move from New York to Florida. The last time something like this played out last minute, it destroyed me. So John ends up going ahead and saying, like, let's do it. So I hop in the car 3 days later, load up all my stuff, and drive down to Florida. I spent my last $50 on gas and Burger King. We hit Florida. We live in my parents' house with my grandparents, and we're upstairs. We're hyped up on energy. Back to it. day after day after day, I'm applying for jobs and applying for jobs and applying for jobs, and I get 3. A trattoria, an Italian restaurant, a country club, and a serving, a traveling server position. I spend the rest of I literally have nothing. John buys me a car. With thousands of dollars to his name, he buys me a car. A 2003 Ford Explorer. A car that I can use to drive around. And I promise I'm going to pay it back. And as I'm making money at these serving jobs, I just realized that my life's falling apart. That every business I'd ever tried just fell apart. I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I was working 3 jobs. And I had this prayer with God, and I sat there in my car driving home one night and said, I need to convert my income to online. I need to convert my income to online, Lord. I need to convert my income to online. I need to. This was a vivid conversation, sun setting above the windshield, and I fly back to New York for a week. I quit all 3 jobs and I come back to Florida. I've got $2,000 to my name. I end up selling my Ford Explorer for $3,000 cash, pay off John. He's paid off, and I got $3,000 to my name. I start this little tiny company called The First Client, and I check on the Facebook group that I had started a year prior, and it had 5,000 people in it. And I remember that the very first company, the marketing company that I ran, all you need to do is do outreach. So I reached out to every single person in that group. Hey, do you need your first client? Do you need your first client? Because the truth is, I don't necessarily need to promise the world to people, but I can help them get from 0 to 1. I don't know how to get people to $10,000 a month, but I know I can promise them their very first client. So over the next several months, I start unloading with kids, helping them sign their very first client. Everyone's signing their very first client. I go from 0 to 40 students in a couple months. Everyone's eating it up like candy. And I start traveling. I start taking my most successful students, bringing them to Florida, celebrating, traveling around Florida, to Tampa, to St. Pete, to West Palm Beach, to Miami. I take Parker and travel across the entire country with him, from Florida all the way out to the Grand Canyon and back. I start traveling so much and making so much money, I don't even know what to do with it. I made $70,000 in just a couple months. I made more money in those months than my parents and my dad combined. I traveled back to New York and I realized I need to go back to college. So after Christmas hits, I'm 20 years old, I go back to SCAD, the college I originally went to. And as I'm at SCAD for the second time, I realize on the way there in my car, my Prius that I had bought for $5,000 cash, that every problem I would encounter at SCAD was fake. I'm entering fairyland, bubblegum land. Everything here is just fake. No problems are real. Nothing actually happens. This is just fun time. Because SCAD, truthfully, is spring break. It just never fucking ends. So for 20 weeks in a row, I use my money and I go out and I party over and over and over again. I hang out with the hottest chicks. I hook up again with my ex Gabby and I'm falling in love with her all over again. I meet the best group of guys I had ever met in my entire life, a real solid group of men. Friends that I would love to hang out with. Sons of billionaires. Sons of millionaires, kids that I look up to in so many regards. I'm friends with my roommates. I have different groups of friends. I bring John down to Savannah. One of my students, Tyler Strader, I get him to come to Savannah every single weekend to party. It's a blast. And then I realized I need to drop out again. I made $8,000 in 3 weeks at the very end of this run, traveled back up to New York, and on the way up there, after 18 hours of driving, I make a realization. Something hits my brain that says, I need to work with Brad Lee. I had him on my podcast when I was back in Miami almost a year prior. I need to work with him. I need to work with him. I need to help him out. I didn't even know what was going on. I had this little idea just in the back of my head. So I shoot him a DM and he says, join the Zoom call. So I join up on a Zoom call with him and I pitch him. And less than 24 hours later, I didn't sleep that night. I got on a plane and flew all the way to Las Vegas. He put me in the Cosmopolitan Hotel. I made a video about it right here. It was quite literally the craziest moment of my entire existence. I was literally working side by side with Andy Elliott Bradley and a bunch of other people I can't name on this podcast. A bunch of other people. that week changed everything. I flew from Las Vegas back to New York, and then the next day, as soon as I landed, I had a day trader that wanted me to fly to Colorado to film content with him. So I hopped on a plane and flew to Colorado and helped him. Then I flew back to New York. Then I flew all the way to San Diego, California. I flew back and then traveled to Toronto filming content. And then at the very end of the summer, I make one last realization that I need to get the fuck out of New York. So I do what any normal person does, and what Alex knows how to do best. I get in my car and I drive for 18 days across the entire country to Arizona, which is where this video is being filmed. I traveled across the entire country to Lexington, Kentucky, to Nashville, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and now I live here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Where this journey goes past this point, I am not sure. But the truth is, just like in your life, you have a story to tell. My goal has always been make my story the most engaging possible story you could ever tell anybody. A story that's unpredictable, that's spontaneous, that's always keeping people on their toes. And I feel like I've done that. I feel like I genuinely have done that over my 21 years of being alive. And I got you guys to watch this video because I made $100,000. But the truth is what I really have is $100 million worth of life lived inside of me. And that's worth way more than the $100,000 that I made online. But if you guys want to watch and learn how I've done any of it, but if you guys really want to know how I've done any of this, you guys just got to subscribe to my channel. I post about everything I do all the time. And if you really want it, reach out to me personally at 315-767-3199, 315-767-3199. My phone is right here. I will receive the text on this phone and I will text you right back immediately. Give me your name. Just shoot me a text, boys. Peace.